let's move on to our review of the day. Here we go. Carnegie is a 2021 release. The designer is Xavier Georges, who is the designer of TREY and many other games. The artist is our favorite, Ian O'Toole, and it is published by Coin Games and Tesla Games, depending upon which part of the world you are in. Trey, will you give us the tale of the tape? Tell us the story of Carnegie. What are we doing in this game?
So in Carnegie, I think it puts you in the position of being a captain of industry, right? And we are kind of developing our network of various industries and companies across a map of the U.S. So this is not a worker placement game. It is kind of like an action selection game. But yeah, that's what you are. You're a captain of industry, and I guess that's the name that it comes from, is Carnegie. Nobody's playing as Carnegie in this game, but you're kind of playing a Carnegie-like figure. And so part of the game is you're expanding your network, you're building up your company, and then ultimately you're making donations, which I guess is trying to get towards the philanthropy of Carnegie once he had, so much money that ultimately the way you score in this game is giving away your money and converting them into victory points later on. But something we're kind of familiar with of different, you're a captain of industry type of role in the game, similar to Brass.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yet it has that Xavier Georges quality of workers are in the game and they're used in some very, very interesting ways, right? There's a spatial component to how workers are used, and that doesn't even involve workers on the main game board, right?
That's right. So I feel like there's two particularly interesting things that this game is doing that I don't feel exactly like I've seen before. First is the action selection, which is that there's going to be 20 rounds in the game. There's really only 4 different actions that people can choose. You're choosing either construction, human resources, research and development, or management. And you're going to do this first, and then everyone else is going to follow. So that's not particularly new. Like, we've played games, especially like Glory to Rome or,
Sure.
Race for the Galaxy, Puerto Rico, something where you're like, this is the thing we're doing. The person who initiated is going to have some advantage. It's probably just based on turn order. And then everyone else is going to follow. So that's kind of interesting, is that you get into a moment where you're trying to figure out, well, Tom's going to have to do this, so I'm going to do this now. And you're trying to predict out what other people are going to do because there's a certain flow of what actions are going to be taken.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of the game that kind of makes it, I feel like I haven't really played that game before.
Yeah.
The other is that you have this layout of your kind of like corporate HQ, in which you have a number of departments within your HQ building, and you allocate your workers within these departments to determine like how you differ from other players in terms of like how this is both. It's not exactly an org chart, but your finite number of workers are going to your departments, and like that's what you're good at as a corporation. And even like the physical proximity of departments from like the front door of the headquarters matter, because like the further away it is from the front door, the more points you have to spend in human resources to move your workers around when they return from the field.
Yeah.
So this felt very interesting in terms of like, oh, I can build new departments in my corporation or in my company that's going to give me additional utility. Sometimes it's just like making you better at certain things. Other times it's giving you powers that other people don't have. And that was potentially very interesting in that like we all start from a position of relative sameness, and then our game's going to start to vary as we build different companies, both in terms of like what our presence is on the board, but also like how we've organized our game in terms of like how our company's structured.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of actually some DNA from Black Angel and TREY in this game that I don't think is immediately apparent. But especially with Black Angel, I think this game actually does what Black Angel should have done, which is it has a flow of sending meeples between 2 different boards and understanding timing and having a spatial element. In this game, we have our office building, and we're sending meeples from the office building out to this map of the USA. And then at certain times, we're getting those meeples back. We're putting those meeples in departments. And that's those are very similar concepts in Black Angel, where you have these robots that are inactive. You got to activate them. You got to move them into departments. You got to move them from there to a board. And then you have to move them around on that board. You put down cards, sort of departments. So it's kind of like it kind of remixes Black Angel in that way. But I think in a way that feels more interesting and innovative than what Black Angel did.
So the game takes place over 20 rounds, and on each round, one player is going to select an action to take. When they select an action, the actions are going to be either human resources, in which case you are going to be moving your meeples around your own personal office, from office to office, from the lobby when they come back to you into the offices, and then you're going to, in many cases, have to pay to take them from laying down to standing up. In other words, from in reserve or resting to active and ready to participate. Some offices only have one desk in it. Some will have 3 desks, and depending on those, that's how many times you're going to be able to take that action when that action is called upon. So human resources is going to activate all of the human resources offices. There's also management. Management often deals with putting more offices into your building, and that's where that differentiation we were talking about comes into play. Then there's construction is another action. When construction happens, you're going to be building things out on the map, and essentially what that is you're going to be taking your discs and you're going to be placing them out on the map to connect, to build industry in the various cities on a map of the United States, in the hopes of connecting some of the major cities and also scoring points, because some of the bigger cities score a decent number of points just for building in that city. And then last but not least, research and design. Research and design is going to be used to increase your rate of connection between different cities. That is not represented by putting things out on the map, but it is represented in terms of how many points you get for connecting various cities at the end of the game. And also, you can use that to expand the 4 types of industry that you're going to be putting out on the board, or 5 types of industry. 4 types of industry you're putting out on the board. The one other complication is that when you choose one of those actions, you're not just choosing that action, but that action actually exists on a grid, and you're going to move one space to the right on that grid. And there's a variable setup in the game where each game, it's going to be a totally different map of things you're going to activate. So when you activate human resources, you're not just activating human resources, you're also activating the South or the West, or you're activating a donation round, right? An investment round, and so on and so forth. And each of those things have an impact on the game, because a lot of the game is going to be about figuring out ways to chain your actions so that you're always collecting income. And income is not something that at all is guaranteed in the game, which is really fascinating, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the income, the way the income works in this game is a huge aspect of it, because your income is only going to fire off when a region is activated. So you need to, if you want that income, you need to make sure you have all your guys in that region, so that way you can, when it gets activated, you can pull them back and get that income. But that may be at cross purposes of what you really want to do. You may need to get a meeple in the west, but you want to build in the east. And if you build in the east, that means you're putting a meeple in the east. That's kind of the whole game. It's
not going to be triggered for another hour, right?
Yeah, the whole game is kind of like a mind. I don't know what the PG version of the
right
a mind
mess.
That is.
There's great potential for analysis paralysis in this game, because there's a lot to take in, because you're both like, it's both a complicated situation, in order to kind of like play well, you have to anticipate what others are going to do before they do it, right?
Yes.
You know, there is a little bit of an Iocane moment of, well, they're going to do this, so I need to do that. And where this game kind of like is at its most interesting is when it stops. Like there's a certain flow to this game that you played it, you kind of understand of like switching from one action type to another is kind of necessary. Like once you've allocated a lot of your people, you need to do human resources in order to get them back into the office and at their desks so that they can do the things your company needs to do. But sometimes, you want to take a move that's not necessarily great for you, but it's just like so much worse for everyone else. And so you benefited because it's less bad for you. Like that's, I think, the most interesting part of this space is it's like trying to determine how do these moves benefit me more than other people when I do them? There's a certain flow. Can I disrupt it? And so I think there's an interesting thing in this game because this game can be very mean. Yes. Both in terms of like blocking positions on the map, because there's a lot of points to be gained in creating networks across the country, but also like taking actions that other people aren't prepared for in any ways. My point was, damn it, this game can be mean. There's some richness in that. Someone else help me out here. I'll come back to the point.
Okay. I the game can definitely be mean, but it's like it's not necessarily take that, right? Like it's more cutthroat than it is mean in my view.
I mean, let's suppose for just a second.
But take that to me means that you're actually just like kicking over something that someone built.
Well, let's do an example. Let's say the city that has the largest number of industry spaces, I believe, is San Francisco. I think it's got 5 or 6 different spaces to build.
It's got 5.
And let's suppose somebody were building a train,
hypothetically,
so building a connection of industries all the way from the East Coast all the way out, going to San Francisco. They were 1 space away from San Francisco, and none of the 5 spaces are built on in San Francisco. That person would think, hey, this is great. I'll be able to build there. So I do think it is sort of stab your neighbor in the back, poke their eye out. If, for instance, one person going immediately before you builds all 5 spots in one single action in San Francisco, wouldn't you, Ben? Wouldn't you think that's...
So, meaning to clarify, if a very savvy player decided to spam 5 buildings into all 5 slots into San Francisco in one turn in an epic, dramatic, memory-causing moment, that's you know what though? I actually still don't think that's. I think that's more cutthroat than mean, which I know is maybe splitting hairs. Someone being cutthroat may feel mean, but in my mind, like being mean is just like those games where it's just like I'm just going to just take something from you just because I can. Sure. And this was what me doing that actually had a strategic impact for me. Like that was actually important for me.
Sure.
It was important for me to get all those points there. My strategy was built on doing this and trying to mitigate the ability for you guys to create these chains.
Yeah. It's okay, man. But sociopaths never think they're mean.
But I have to respect that even though it didn't come from a place of cruelty, that it felt very cruel for you guys.
And then some. So, yeah. Let's
then, wait, I just have to say it. Then Trey afterwards goes, well, we have to admit, this is an asterisk game. And we're like, why? And you go, well, because, Ben did that move in San Francisco. I'm like, that's not what I said.
That is not what I said. I said this is an asterisk move because I think you're the superior player in this game, Ben, and you are exploring the space.
Oh, okay.
Because I ended up winning that game, but I felt like you were just screwing around,
messing about.
Like you were trying, you were not playing optimally. You were like, you want to say like, well, I want to try something different here. And I think that's one of the things that we're hesitant in this review. Like this can be a long game. Like the first time I played this game with explanation, we got close to 7 hours. And some of that was people were playing with this game.
But let's
can
not
be
give
long.
let's not give that as the impression. Let's say the impression is wrong because really 3 hours is probably about right for this game, which is still long, right?
We spent 7 hours.
Okay,
that happened.
I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying that if we tell people that and we don't explain what we think the real usual length of this game is going to be, people might come away with the wrong idea. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and my point was just that listen, we want to there's clearly plenty left to explore in this game. We've played this game a certain number of times. We're not experts on it. I'm kind of
Yeah.
Somewhat eager to try some new strategies. I have my doubts about how many there actually are, but I'm actually was like praising Ben because he was zagging.
Yeah.
And he was exploring different spaces. And that was the asterisk, not because you were mean, Ben, but rather like I don't think you were maximizing your points. I think you were like, I'm exploring the space. And Paul does this sometimes too, where, the goal may not be winning. It may be like, let's play this game differently and see if we learn some things that we, don't know about it yet.
See, I think.
I was trying to win, by the way. In my, no, I know what you're saying. Thank you for clarifying that. I was trying to actually win because in my mind, my thing, I have this weird trigger where when someone says this is the way the game is, this is the meta, you have to do this. If you don't do this, you're never going to win. I have this weird thing where I kind of want to push back on that. So in my mind, I was saying, we have this mindset that like if you don't connect these cities, you're gonna lose, right? And I kind of want to say, what happens if I just go for these high
no one
value
connects
cities?
to these cities?
Yeah.
Well, no, that was important
And you
because
lose.
it occurred to me that one thing that we haven't said is that there are 3 different tiers of cities, small, medium, and large. And the large ones, every quote unquote, it's called a project that you build in a large city is worth 3 points. And it occurred to me that if I just rather than focus on making these connections, if I just build in these big cities, if I get all 12 of my discs out, that's 36 points right there. And if you maximize your links, that's 36 points. So in my mind, I was thinking, if I, rather than deal with the stress of having to get into San Francisco and connecting and all that and worrying about being blocked, if I just focus on the big cities, I could get a big chunk of points. But I was also cognizant that if you guys did links, you guys would get the link points and pick up other points from the cities. So I was like, if I'm going to do this strategy, I have to do it in a way that I'm also disrupting other people's links. That's the way that this is going to work. Otherwise, I'm going to get 36 points, and then maybe you guys get 18 to 27 points off of your links, but then you also are going to get some points from the big cities. So that was actually my entire mindset of that. And that's why I took that really aggressive move.
See, I think you listened to last week's episode when Paul and Matt cataloged the various times I lost my damn mind in a game, and you were like, "I've never seen Tom lose his mind. I think I'm gonna go for it here."
You have the most docile losing your mind. You were like, okay.
No, I didn't lose my mind. I mean, contrary to the to the perceptions from last week, I don't usually do that. Not that I haven't, but not.
Well, let's
usually.
get back to the longness question, because I think this is important. I think a lot of different players are going to have different perspectives on this. I do think you can get the player time down on this. A criticism for me is not that this game is necessarily long. To me, in every game I've played, this game has felt like it's overstayed its welcome. Like sometimes the map feels like the map game has been resolved by turn 13 out of 20. So like most of the games we play that I feel like are really good often feel like, oh, I would have loved to play just one more turn. Like it ends just slightly before you kind of want it to, before your engine peaks. And like this one feels like we play like often like this game's been resolved and we still have like 4 more rounds to play. That's something to happen. And so I feel like this game could be a lot tighter in terms of what it wants to do. I almost feel like this game could use like a Prelude expansion. I feel like there's probably expansions in the work anyway in terms of like more departments, but I would like the same way that Prelude kind of like jumpstarts terraforming Mars and gets the engines goosed quicker so you can kind of really get into the game quicker. I almost feel like Carnegie needs something to get us into it a little bit quicker, because I've just found every game we've played has been too long for what this is.
Yeah, I mean, Trey and I, so spoiler alert, Trey and I do have some mixed feelings about this game, and let's get into that, and then Ben, who has I think it's safe to say a more positive view of the game, can offer a spirited defense. First of all,
I will.
This is my least favorite Ian O'Toole artwork. I don't think that this is a very pretty game. I don't. It doesn't. The art really doesn't do anything for me. It's kind of, I don't know.
Is there kind of a deco look to this?
But not right. I mean,
Yeah, it's sort of deco. I actually like the art. I love our office building player mat. I really enjoy that quite a bit, to be honest.
To me, it looks pretty bland and generic, which I love Ian O'Toole. So that's saying something. Second thing, I think there's some. I think that if we're talking about an expansion to this game that has new departments, I think they need a Hellas expansion for this game where they offer either a variable map or a new map, because I don't think this map is great. I think this map is kind of problematic. I think there are better and worse areas and better and worse places, and it doesn't feel. Yeah, it doesn't.
It's
it doesn't
also
feel
feeling
like
a little samey on
expand?
replay.
Yes.
Too, right?
Can you expand on that? Like, what do you feel like are the good places, and what do you feel are the bad places?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's see. Places like Pittsburgh, places like let me look at the map here, so I have it right in front of me.
Well, like the issue is always like connecting to the West, right?
Yeah.
Like this is kind of like the big.
Denver, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh are second level, mid level cities. Pittsburgh makes it a one jump to connect New York and Chicago. Kansas City and Denver make San Francisco and Houston connections or New Orleans connections way easier than any other variant. Literally to the point of reducing the number of discs you got to put down and the number of construction actions you have to take by three or four. And since there are only 3 spots available in certain games and certain player counts, those cities could be closed by the time the third person or fourth person to play gets their turn, which is kind of a problem.
Well, there's a turn issue. We think there may be a player turn order issue in this game that we've experienced, right, Tom?
Yes.
Well, that was
yes.
your feeling.
Yeah, I do. I feel that way, and I think you felt it too. There are penalties for going later in the turn order that I don't feel have been properly addressed,
especially on turn 1, right?
By the game.
Turn 1 where it really matters.
Yes, and to that point, we don't believe this. Or listen, we have to say we have not played this game enough times to say this with authority. We are relying on our experiences, on our observations, and our intuition, having played a lot of games that are not that dissimilar from this, and feeling like we can see where this is going. We feel that the departments are not tremendously equal either, and that a player later in the turn order can also get shut out of the best departments, which are going to offer
because
the best.
Finite, right?
Yes, because they are quite
disappear.
finite. Yeah, and a person can through no fault of their own be shut out of some of the departments that are going to offer the better action spaces and decisions to be made later in the game. So there's that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the department issue is really that's inspiring a lot of commentary online, and I think that's fair. I've won where I've used the what's considered to be the weaker departments, or people have had the stronger departments. So I don't think it's necessarily locked in.
Sure.
That if you don't get this department or that department, you're going to lose. For me, I am encouraged by the fact that the Kickstarter is bringing in many more departments and also many more donation spots, which could increase the variability on that front. But at the same time, where I think the issue for me with the departments is that when you find a combo that you really like, you're kind of always going to be drawn to that combo. There's nothing telling you not to go for that combo. And so for me, my biggest issue with the game, actually, before I talk about all the things that I love about it, because I do love it, is I have an issue with the way we start out the gates with this game. And I'm not necessarily feeling like I need a prelude out of this, get a prelude type expansion. But what happens is that every game, there's nothing inspiring me to place my initial disc during setup in a different city, because you all have to do that. There's nothing that's inspiring me to change where I put my meeples and my initial layout of my office.
Yep.
There's nothing really pushing me that strongly to go for different departments if I have first dibs on them. So that is
Yeah.
Part of that, but the
it's-
variable setup's not that variable. It's a pretty limited space in
Yes.
terms
And
of how
the thing
the
is-
game gets set up differently.
absolutely. And the game will develop in a different way because we have this timeline system. And so different regions are going to activate at different times and different frequencies over the course of the game, which will impact how you build, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of like actually just getting the ball rolling, it kind of feels samey at the very beginning. And then as a result, because it feels a little samey at the beginning, sometimes the idea of sitting down and being like, you want to play some Carnegie, you think to yourself, here we go again. And the truth is that I actually really love this game. And my suggestion is that they come out with like a micro expansion or just incorporate this in the final game, but this game isn't even out yet, where maybe everyone gets a card that says if you're the first one to have this configuration of your office, you need to have an office in this space, an office in that space, and you have to have these types of offices, and maybe you have to have built in these 3 cities, something like that, where you're now being pushed in a little bit of a direction just to mix it up. I think would actually be really beneficial.
It might be. It might be. I mean, I would also say that if there was simply, without needing anything extra, what if the beginning of the game, the last player to go gets to choose one department and to place one disc on the map somewhere, thereby creating a situation in which there is sort of a reverse first placement. That might address some of those issues as well. But yeah, the map may have. I feel like it probably has a little bit of a Terra Mystica issue, in that in the original Terra Mystica, the map was better for certain colors than for other colors. There were some colors that just did not have a great map. Now, this obviously doesn't have the color issue, but it may be a map that first of all, the map could be really mean. This game sort of seems to lead toward maybe ideal play could very well be blocking people. That the smartest action to take in a lot of cases could be making sure you don't connect this city and this city, despite having spent 4 or 5 discs in that process.
And
I mean,
that kind of game, and like I think that's fine. I think know what game you're playing, and this is one of those games. I tend to find that kind of blocking and stuff more acceptable in the shorter the game is, right?
Yeah.
Because like this definitely is one of those games where like you can get blocked, or you can even just screw up. Like it's real easy just to get out of sync in this and feel like, okay, I'm out, but I've got 2 more hours of this game. So like I just find all that stuff to be more acceptable in the shorter experience. And this is not a short gaming experience. It's not Twilight Imperium, but it's not a short one.
I'll also say
it's funny with the map with.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I beg my pardon. Age of Steam has blocking in it, but it almost always is, I'm blocking you, but I'm not blocking you to block you. I'm blocking you literally because my railroad needs to go through that space. I'm dying to do that. Whereas in this game, you can build anywhere at any time. So a lot of times the blocking in this game is going to feel different. It's going to feel less like you have to do this and more like, well, the smartest play I can do is to just really spitefully hurt you right here.
Yeah, which I guess does go back to my San Francisco move, right? I mean, because in my mind, it was strategic. I wasn't doing it just to get you mad. It was to be strategic. But it was ultimately, my strategy was I had to stop you, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's so funny because with this map, I actually have not been frustrated by it. And I've somehow over the past year, I'm going to blame it on pandemic anxiety. I have become someone who gets you blocked me. I've suddenly become that person. And I have not had that issue with this game.
Clearly.
And I think it's because I think I have made peace with the idea that if I'm going to go try to connect into San Francisco, if things go wrong, that's on me because that is a gamble. That entire section of the board is designed to be the ultimate gamble because if you do it, then guess what? You're going to get a lot of points. And if you mess up, then you've messed up. And I actually like that. And I have found that when I just focus on sort of the other 3 cities, and then if I say, okay, there might be an opening for me, I have a much healthier experience with the board. Mm-hmm. I also think that what's interesting about this game, and this is one of the things I was thinking about last night in bed when I was thinking about this game and what we're going to be talking about, is that when we talk about how there's a chance to build, like when you have no one in your building departments, and then someone does the construction action, and it feels like, oh, I missed one of my chances to build. There's actually a little bit of, I don't know what the right word is, a fallacy or whatever, because yes, it's a chance to build now, but if I have one person in my construction office now, I build one building. If I load up 3 people in there and do it on a later turn, I may have missed the first opportunity, but I actually do much more later on. Mm-hmm. So you miss a turn, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily like, that was one of the 4 buildings you get to place. Yeah. So when I think about this board too, when I think about these areas where you could be blocked, I think that there's also value in kind of loading up your constructions. That way you can put out 3 buildings right away and lock down an entire route before. Because if you put down maybe just 1 building, you're saying to people, "Oh, I want to go into there," and then people will come in and lock you out.
Projects here, right?
Sure.
Projects.
I'm sorry, projects. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, you built 5 in a turn, and in order to do that, you would need to have a construction department that I did not have an ability to buy. Interestingly enough. So look, I think that my ending pitch for this game is that I think this is a kind of fascinating game. I think it is very complex. It has a lot of really great moving parts. I think it is very well designed and really kind of interesting. But at the end of the day, I have not had that much fun playing it. I've been frustrated by I've been frustrated by the board, by the choice of departments, by the length of the game, because I agree with Trey. I felt that this game sort of sputtered to a conclusion as opposed to rose to a conclusion. And at the end of the day, I'm not tremendously eager to play it again. Now that said, I think that any heavy gamer, I think, needs to play this game. I think you need to try it out. That's what I think.
Yeah, if you're a listener to this podcast, you probably should play this game. And so I'm like, this is a mid-level recommendation for me. And if the top level recommendation is back the Kickstarter, this is like one below, which is like play your friend's copy a couple times, decide if it's for you. For some people, it will be. For a lot of people, it won't. And you'll know at that point. And for a lot of people, playing this game a couple of times is going to be all you ever need to play it.
Yeah.
And the good news is it's on Board Game Arena, which has a really good implementation.
True.
Now, that being said, I actually fully respect what you guys are saying. I think this game is amazing. I think that this game will definitely land in my top 10 of this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it landed in top 5. I do have issues with how it kind of feels samey, and I've been thinking about Brass, and why is it that Brass has always the same beginning, but it doesn't feel samey, or Hansa Teutonica, but this one sort of does have that. I'm still kind of grappling with that, but if we put that to the side, and we've talked a lot about the map, we've actually talked almost exclusively about the map in this game, and there's actually so much more.
Yeah, the map's the least interesting thing about the game.
Right? There's so much more, and I think the fact that even talking about this, like, oh, well, if you want to do a San Francisco move, you have to like hold back and then pounce, right? Or maybe something that Tom could have done before was maybe build in San Francisco to lock that down, but he probably didn't do it because it didn't make sense with the income, right? Or this or that, we're talking about all these different things that you could be doing. And one thing that I love about this game is there are actually so many approaches to how you use your meeples and how you are getting your stuff onto that map. And we haven't even touched upon how you're going to be using R&D, the research thing, because R&D is what's going to open up different types of projects for you. The different types of projects you have are going to give you access to different cities. And that's also going to unlock different income. And
we also didn't mention charity.
Charity.
Donations.
So
Donation.
This is another area where variability would be good, because there's a tendency for me to kind of go to the same donations, but the donations,
some are better than others. Yeah,
some are better. Like the train one is really good. That one means that you get your income on all 4 income tracks in the region up to the train level. That one's relatively easy to achieve. But yeah, some are definitely easier to achieve. I would like a little bit of a zhuzhing with the donations.
Yeah.
Especially because we fill them all up, basically. Every time you play the game, like they're kind of all going to get taken. It's just the order that you grab them. Yeah. So when people hear donations here, what you really should think is that we're spending our money as captains of industry in order to lock in end-game points that are based upon, that reward us based upon certain ways that we've built out our game, right? Yeah. Like how many projects do I have in the East? 2 points per project in the East. That type of thing. So, but it can be like half your scoring can be in these donations at the end of the game,
which is thematic because Carnegie is noted for how many libraries around the nation are built because of Andrew Carnegie's generosity.
Right. Ben, did you finish your point? Because I remembered the thing I forgot earlier.
Ooh.
I can go back to my point, but I would rather you go back to your. You finish what you were saying.
So the point I wanted to make when I was talking about mean is here's the word Kalis. This game has something kind of in common with Kalis, which is like you can play Carnegie and it'll be a friendly game in which people just take the action that kind of like helps them the most on each turn. And like you can play Kalis in kind of a friendly way where nobody ever really moves the bailiff or whatever it is and ends up knocking people, like having people's actions be completely wasted. Like this is one of those games where players do kind of like have a choice in terms of like how much they're going to dial in the nastiness. And I would say like if you're not playing Kalis as a cutthroat game, you're not really playing it.
If you're not messing with the
Kalis gets played in a friendly way probably like half the time. And I think that Carnegie falls into that category of like probably plenty of people are just going to take their turns, I'm filling out the slots. How many points do you have? That's how many points I have. You win. Like, and it's that kind of game. And then there's playing with Paul and the rest of us now where it's like, oh, we're starting to see the edges here where it's like, oh, I can really wreck this guy on this turn. And so it feels a little bit, not exactly 18xx, but like you need to be exploring those edges of like, oh, I can knock Tom out of the game right here.
Yeah, like that. I've had those edges. Like I've been on the receiving end of those edges actually a few times. Like even in that 7-hour game, there was that moment where Paul and my friend John flipped this token, which we haven't even talked about this token, that in the 3 and 4 player game, there are these tokens that's allow you to take a different action than the one that the round leader chose. And they flipped their token in a way that would screw me and TREY. But at that moment, I was like, oh, those mother effers, right? But then actually it was fine. For me, it was fine. It was like, oh, okay, I can just do this instead. And I've actually found that being on the receiving end of these more cutthroat moves, I've been able to pivot pretty easily in this game. It's funny. I haven't been stymied by the map. I haven't been stymied by the cutthroat things. I've had some things, oh, shucks. I've had oh, shucks moments, but I just keep, I have found that you are able to keep plowing along, which I don't know if that's the game. I don't know if it's me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm an apologist. Who knows? But I haven't had that problem.
Whereas, Tom, you needed to do a construction action at the end of our game and couldn't. We were playing a 3-player game. You were the third person. There's only 20 rounds in the game. This is why you get the compensatory tile or whatever. But like you're not being able to do construction at the end was probably like almost like 30 points that you lost.
Easily. It was easily 30 points. And when it comes right down to it, that compensation of getting that one tile, is that enough for everyone getting one more turn than you do in terms of action selection? Maybe. But when you add on to that the fact that you are the last person to go in the first round, and so the best departments could be gone, the best map locations in many cases could be gone, and there are better and worse locations and departments. We're pretty sure about that. It all adds up to I don't think this is really balanced too well. But look, let's end it here because we have something else we want to talk about today. This is a polarizing game for us. Even the people, even Trey and I, who have a good number of reservations about the game, still find there's a lot to admire and there's a lot to dig into this game. And for people like Ben. Ben, I hear a full-throated recommendation of this game, and yet I'm also hearing you recommending several changes to it as well. So,
well, just in the initial setup,
sure,
right? Like I think that this game does a brilliant job with creating a huge decision tree. I think it's great that on your turn you have to stop and you have to look at what every other person is doing. You have to look at what everyone else's office building is like, where their position is, and you have to get into their mind and say, what do I think they're going to pick on their turn? Like, I really want to do this thing now, but I think that they might do it, so maybe I'll do this thing instead. Or, ooh, I think they're going to do this, and even though I want to do action C, I need to do action A because they're going to do action B next. And if I just go for action C, then this is going to fall apart and that's going to fall apart. I think those decisions are amazing. And I think managing your meeples, growing your meeple pool is really fascinating. How you work with your income, how you spend your R&D, whether your R&D is going to be on your player tabs to get more projects available or on the board and the transpo tracks, so that way you can pull back your income, is cool. And I think what I'm excited about is to just keep going back and playing in this sandbox and trying different departments, because I do fear that we may be sort of stuck in a groupthink here. Because I was just listening to Shut Up and Sit Down, and they were actually talking about this too. And they were talking about it, and they're like, well, you really don't collect income every turn. It's only here. It's like only on certain turns. And it occurred to me that the way they must be playing is they're not trying to get people in every region at all times. They're probably putting multiple people in a single region, and then collecting a big income when that pulls back. And that's what I'm assuming. But the point is that they may have a completely different meta. And it made me realize there are so many different ways to play this game. And I think it's great.
Incorrect and correct. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Carnegie 2021. I think all three of us say that you should try this game. It is a design that is different than every other design that we've ever seen, and is worthy of your time at the very least. So check it out.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.